Episode 27, Three Brothers Talking. It is I, David.
Andrew is here.
This is Jeremy. I'm just making sure we don't overlap.
Make sure we all talk in different time slots there because we're doing another virtual episode. Well, a real episode, but virtually recorded.
So basically, Andrew will answer every question first.
Yep.
We'll keep things in sequential order.
Yes.
Raise your hand. if you have anything
Raise
to
your
say.
hand because we are on video chat. So
We're on a video chat. There might be a little function like where you can like raise hand. If you've ever been in a webinar at work that is painfully boring, you can like
All of
press you can press on a little button that says raise hand, and then the person lecturing never actually calls on you or anything anyway.
David would like to interject. Yeah.
Exactly. It's episode 27, the webinar version
Yep.
of Three Brothers Talking. I've got Jack Daniels. Andrew has...
I'm
what do you
doing
have?
a local high bank distillery for those around Columbus. This was we're recording this right before Valentine's Day, and this was my wife's very thoughtful Valentine's gift for me.
I got nothing, so I already kind of enjoyed a beer while I watched a little bit of something with Faith. So.
There you go. What were you watching?
Alias. Faith. We're watching Alias.
Alias, because we are recording this show in 2002.
Yeah.
Hey, man, don't knock it. Bradley Cooper's in it and everything.
Bradley Cooper's in Alias?
Yeah, he's like one of the friends, like in the friend zone, hardcore friend
Oh,
zone.
too bad for Brad.
It's okay. It works out for him later on in life.
Yeah, I think it's going all right for Bradley Cooper. But today, we are going to remind people that if you want to sponsor the podcast, you can do that. It's pretty simple. All you have to do is email us, threebrotherstalking@gmail.com. You have to do more than that. You can't just like email us, but once you email us, we then talk about how to sponsor the podcast. And next week, actually, we're working on something with a familiar name to the podcast by the name of Muskox. We'll have a little something, not next week because we won't have an episode next week, but next time we have an episode, we'll have something with them, and they're awesome. And so you're allowed to go ahead and cash in on that before we even formally do the promotion, but do it. Jeremy's raising his hand.
I love my sweatshirt. That's all I'm going to say. I'm a big fan.
Yep. They did hook us up.
They did hook us up. The sweatshirts are nice. I have a flannel. The flannel's really nice.
Andrew, do I have to claim that on my taxes?
We're just gonna retract that from the episode, and then it just vanishes. Yeah.
Oh, that never happened. Just hit
So you know,
rewind.
Yeah.
I'm Jeremy's tax guy, so that's why he's asking me.
And Andrew
We
is
all have our skills.
Andrew's available to do the taxes of any listener of the program.
No.
Andrew's tax services would like to sponsor an episode, I heard.
Exactly. Andrew Appelt, CPA, would like to
I do
sponsor.
not favor individual taxes, but I do them for Jeremy because he's my brother.
Andrew just
There you go.
Andrew just handles the multi-billion-dollar corporation taxes. That's what he likes to be in.
Like Jeremy Appel to LLC.
exactly.
Just like that.
Exactly.
Like this podcast one day. No.
Like this podcast. We all have to claim the millions and millions of dollars from this podcast.
Yeah.
You know? You know what, though? Doing taxes is part of what... We have talked about this topic before on our podcast, the topic of adulting. And I, at least, have come out heavily against the term adulting. I don't remember if you guys were with me on that, but I said that I hated the term adulting.
Yeah.
I think that it's just kind of lame. That's the best thing I can say about it. It's just kind of lame to me. And what's even more lame is University of California, Berkeley, because they have an adulting class. It's literally the name of the class is adulting. The headline is UC Berkeley offers course on adulting where students learn basic life skills.
Yep. Like,
And Andrew, you saw this.
look
What
at
do you think about it?
I saw it in passing too. Like it was like something on Facebook. But yeah, like it literally says the among the thousands of people across the country who have signed up for courses that focus on things such as cooking or budgeting or time management.
It's home ec.
Yeah, it's
Home ec.
basically it's college home ec credit.
It's just called getting your own apartment when you turn
Exactly.
18.
I was in the gym when I saw this. It came across like a news channel or whatever, because it's the only time I watch a news channel is in the gym where I'm forced to watch a news channel. And I almost like fell off of the treadmill because I was so shocked that this exists.
You know what
And
else?
There's a
you know
wait
what else
list.
is
They said
shocking?
there's a wait list.
It's,
There's a wait list for the class.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, it's full right now. It's waitlisted.
Well,
Incredible.
And you
I want to
and
teach
you
that
know,
class.
like, I mean, UC Berkeley is one of the most expensive schools in the country as well. So, like, this is not cheap per
Yeah.
credit hour.
You might be tempted to think this is like a community college class.
No.
But here's the thing. The people that go to community colleges probably are way smarter than like the people in UC Berkeley that apparently don't know how to balance a budget.
Yeah.
People that go to community colleges actually know how to like, they actually know what it is to spend money responsibly. That's probably why they're in a community college.
Versus
Probably
versus
not going
spending
to that
60
class.
grand a year at UC
Yeah.
Berkeley.
And it's even, I see here the class is a pass fail class. You don't even get like graded in it. That's incredible to me.
Oh.
How do you get to... I want to facilitate this class. Can I
They
do it
said they have
remotely?
guest speakers. I want to be a guest speaker.
How do you get Andrew, you honestly could with like tax stuff. You could do a class on taxes.
Yeah, like I could, throw out
Here's
some
how you
tax
use
stuff.
TurboTax, everybody.
I'd be like, hey, there's a lot of things out there for you to file really easily.
Here's how you do this. Google CPAs near me, call one of them, do what they say.
Or just
There
go
you
on
go.
TurboTax and follow the literal step-by-step instructions.
I tell you what, I lose faith in the college system more and more every day.
Yep.
Every single day.
Man.
What can you expect, Ange? What can you expect from education these days if people can get to like age 22,
Yeah.
20 years old, and they're still wondering how to do taxes or, make a balanced budget or something like that?
Yep. It's not a big confidence builder with that when you're raising like an infant. I don't know, like me and Jeremy's current situation. Like you're just trying to go against the grain, I feel like.
I tell you what, though, if you make sure your kids know how to balance a budget and be a basic adult, learn basic life skills, apparently they're ahead of the game
Mhm.
and they're going to do just fine.
Well, Mike is already passing that.
Yeah.
Mike is already working on his taxes.
Yep.
Mike is doing my taxes.
There you go.
Andrew's going to double check his work.
It's
Yeah,
so
Andrew's
funny
just-
to me when like I have a lot of friends that literally ask me like every single year that like, hey, can you do taxes for me this year? And I'm like, dude, just go online and follow the instructions because your taxes are not like, I mean, I'm sorry, but like you can walk through it yourself and you don't have to pay somebody to do it. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking as a guy who pays somebody to do it.
yeah, but like,
No.
I'm talking about like,
I do it out of laziness.
Yeah.
I don't do it because I think it's hard. I just do it because
Yeah.
I don't want to think about it. And so I
and
get
I
a
mean,
CPA
for
to do
you
it.
guys now, you guys like have a house, you're married, all that.
Mhm.
Versus like these
We
are
are those
individuals
things.
that are literally just single with a W-2 and like
Yeah.
yeah
It'll take you about 20 seconds if you're not married.
yeah
Anyway, the real topic of the evening is expectations. This is
Oh.
it's not how to do your taxes or how to
I thought it was...
how to
I
clean
thought
your
we were going to talk about...
how to clean your
others.
floors or whatever else they teach in UC Berkeley. But my wife actually, shout out to Rachel, because she actually, I was about to say like shout out to her Instagram account or whatever, but I actually don't know what her handle is. So
trying to get
Can't do
those
that.
followers up.
that's right. You know my wife, she's all about
She's big
getting
into
followed. We're the couple that made people mad by not posting all of our wedding pictures to social media. And we are like,
Dave, you gotta
we
get-
thought those were for us.
You got to get the likes.
Gotta get the likes. I know. We'll never have a big podcast if we don't start caring about social media.
Yep.
That's really what's holding us back. That's the only thing.
That's it.
But she's talking about expectations, and expectations not only in the context of marriage, but how in life you expect things to be a certain way, and then you get to that life stage and you realize that's not, no matter how prepared you thought you were, you're not always prepared as you thought you were.
Mm-hmm.
And in the context of marriage, I'll open it up to you guys. If not, I've got something to start off with, but I'll open it up to you guys. Like, what are things that this idea brought about in your head about like expectations in marriage? What were you expecting to walk into in marriage versus what you actually did? / how do expectations create conflict or stuff in your home?
Yeah.
Floor's open. Raise your hand, and I'll call upon you.
I can. I mean, my first thought was with like just the expectation of dominating one's time and time management. Because like prior to marriage, the expectation was, hey, she's got her responsibilities, her job, her life kind of thing. I have my responsibilities and stuff, and we're both living, largely singularly, and up until we were married. So now that we come together and we're just living together, basically, it's very easy to have the mindset of like, okay, we're just kind of co-living, but yet we're still kind of just in our own circles, and we'll still have all the time that, the time that we would have outside of that. But then you get into marriage and like, for some reason, those responsibilities that are now shared, and then a lot is then added to them. So your time quickly vanishes.
Yes.
And obligation, there's a lot more obligations on both of you as a unit versus what you thought maybe of just like basically you continuing your life at, just with your significant other, also continuing her life.
Yeah. That's a good point. Jeremy, do you have something? You look like you're about to say something.
No, I was just listening intently.
He's just listening very intently.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Like, you don't realize, and actually I would say Rachel and I, in the second year of our marriage, we kind of came to a realization that it seemed like we were sort of trying to live still in that single mindset.
Yeah.
And to have a good marriage, you actually have to really start to be willing to like totally intertwine your time, your responsibilities. All that stuff's got to blend together.
Yep.
Like everything is shared. Everything is shared. And, but you don't realize, it's easy to think like while you're engaged, while you're dating, that this marriage thing will be pretty easy because, you're just kind of, you got time now, and somehow time just kind of vanishes.
Yeah.
You have more responsibilities, and they're all good responsibilities. But it reminds me of what the Bible says when it talks about that a man, I mean, it's in 1 Corinthians that, a man who has a wife has more earthly cares.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reality to that statement.
Yep.
That at first can frustrate you. If you let it, you can think like, oh, I wish we could both spend our time totally like independently, exactly how we want to do it and all this. But that's just not reality that you live in. And the reality of marriage is far better, even though it doesn't match up with your expectations.
And I think too, kind of off of that is like, you can either, your time is going to be like, it's going to vastly change, and your interests and all that are going to be merged, whether you like it or not in marriage.
Yeah.
And it's to the point where like either it can cause you friction in the fact that you want to push back and still live singularly and try to dominate things, or to have a successful marriage, like you're saying, you would just lean into that and truly invest in what her interests are and what your interests are and what you have now combined interests. And that's where that's where you grow, I think, because otherwise it'll just cause friction in that you think you can still maintain kind of your own siloed life just now co-living with someone, that marriage is it's gonna force you out of that, either in a good way or you're gonna try to fight against it.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's something to be said about how the Apostle Paul says that the marriage relationship is a picture of Christ to his church.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when a sinner comes to Christ, they die and they are given a new life, right?
Yeah.
We have died in Christ. And one of my favorite things about marriage, talking to people about it, I emphasize that you are now one flesh. Like, Andrew is dead.
Mm-hmm.
Just strictly speaking, Andrew's gone. Jeremy's gone. I am gone. And Rachel's gone. Faith is gone. Kaylee's gone. Instead, everything is you. We are all one flesh now.
Mm-hmm.
And as such, like, my time, I can no longer want to dominate it and just do how I want to spend it. And all of my interests and all of my wife's interests, they have to be sacrificed. And then we bring together new interests as one flesh together.
Yeah.
And like you said, Andrew, you can resist that in marriage, or you can lean into it.
Yeah.
And you can, and there's plenty of couples, and it makes me sad sometimes, there's plenty of couples that get along in their marriage by not blending very much.
Yeah.
And it's doable. I think you can survive and all that stuff. And it's not necessarily sinful or whatever. But I do think you're actually missing out on some of the beauty and joy to be found in marriage by not both of you making that sacrifice to come together as one flesh.
Yeah. Jeremy, you got any thoughts?
No, I mean, I think that you guys are,
It's easy, right, Jeremy? It's easy to do this.
It is super easy to do this. Let me tell you that.
Well, that's where I would talk to the people who are single, like, listening to this, is it's not just a marriage principle as well. Like, you become a person that lays their self-desires down regularly for other people and for what God would have you do. Because that's what marriage is. Marriage becomes a picture where, like, every day you do have a concrete example in front of you of, am I going to do what I want to do, or am I going to do what serves the people around me? And that is a lesson, whether you're married or single. I would say if you're single now and listening to this, then it'll only be better for your marriage in the future if you begin to release some of that selfishness and be less. Because I know when I was single, I was very selfish with my time. Because when you're single, you can be very selfish with your time. And that's not inherently a bad thing. It's one of the good parts about being single. And as Scripture also says, if you're single, you can have more of a devotion to God and less worries in this life. And if you're single, start, though, removing the selfish use of your time, and instead think about ways to serve. Because then whenever you get married, it'll be so much easier to give yourself to that process, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I mean, I didn't know how selfish I was and how many unrealistic expectations I had about marriage until I got married. And then I realized there's all kinds of things, that you don't like. I tell people a lot that our marriage counseling for Rachel and I wasn't worthless, but marriage counseling in general is a little worthless, because marriage is not theoretical, and marriage is not like a series of propositions and ideas.
Yeah.
Marriage is real life, and you can have all the right answers. Like, before Rachel and I got married, if you asked us theological questions about marriage, about the home, about our priorities, about this or that or whatever, we would answer them all almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
But then you get married and you realize it's not quite, even yourself. You're like, oh, I didn't even know my own heart that well in this. Like, as you get married and live life, how you really operate comes to the surface.
Well, that's why I think we've talked about this, I think, before a little bit, but like how counseling, like getting with the current setup, getting your like 4 to 5 visits with a pastor or something like that, doing a workbook or checking off some boxes, and then like they give you your blessing and you go on your way
Perfect
and get
marriage.
married. Yeah. Like it's a really, I think, inefficient way to actually cultivate what we're talking about here, because I think it would be much more suited to, yes, you want to do your due diligence prior to stepping into marriage, obviously, but that should also be with those that are closer to you, that know both of those individuals, rather than just like some pastor you seek out, maybe. But then also on that, like you should,
and hopefully your pastor knows you that well.
But I'm saying like for those that are just going to like meet with the person that might be marrying them, if that's not,
I'm with you.
And as far as like actually cultivating this, it would be much more efficient to have that relationship from the beginning of marriage forward and continuing on, so that as you start doing life together, like then it becomes much more real versus just the lip service of how you're going to treat each other, what you think about these certain topics. Yeah. It's
So are expectations a bad thing going into marriage, a good thing, or
yes, get rid of them all. That's interesting, because one of the things I had written down was expectations and priorities for marriage and how you handle them. Because, for example, Rachel and I have had some of the conflict we experience. We don't experience much, but some of the conflict we experience, I think, is centered around Rachel and I together learning what it looks like to aim at church planting and ministry and pastoring as a couple. I felt like I knew how to do that as an individual. Rachel felt like she knew how to do that as a spouse of a pastor or whatever. But even as we look ahead and begin to aim our lives in that direction, we realize all these conflicts, crop up. Just because as you're living it out, you realize this demands different things than I pictured and all that. And so expectations aren't bad, but I think you have to communicate your expectations to your spouse.
Yeah.
And you have to do that in big things and small things. I remember a long time ago, I heard a podcast. I don't really remember which one it was. It might have been The Rugged Marriage, which Jeremy knows that podcast, I think. I think it was on there that a guy said, uncommunicated expectations are premeditated resentments.
Yeah, I was actually looking for that quote.
Okay, well, I gave it to you. There you go.
There you go.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, uncommunicated expectations are premeditated resentments. And and that's not just, that's not just a marriage idea.
No, that's everywhere.
Yeah, like
work, friendships.
If you don't communicate, if you have an expectation and you don't communicate it to somebody, that's more than likely they're going to fail that expectation because they don't know it exists. One thing I've learned about marriage, you can't just assume that your spouse thinks about everything the way you do and they have every plan exactly how you plan. Their time and everything, they're not just going to plan it exactly how you would plan it. And if you don't communicate your expectations, you're just getting ready to have a fight because they're going to not do something you would have expected them to do, or, you're going to have a mismatch in that realm. But it's not bad to have priorities or expectations in marriage, but I do think that there's a big learning curve for learning how to meet those priorities and expectations, because it's not as easy as just, snapping your fingers. We had the idea of this being our priority, and so it is. There's
not actually working toward making it a priority, but it's a priority.
It's a priority, and it takes practice. It takes lots of trying and together communicating and working towards those priorities and expectations, because they won't be fixed and solved overnight.
Well, and that's something that learning through it, you're sitting there. Because Faith and I talked the other day. It's like, man, like you just think everything. Dave, you said when you're single, you think getting married is gonna not necessarily be easy, but you think you'll understand. And you kind of know what to do. But then you get into it, and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I thought this would be easier, or I thought it'd just be. I expected it to just not necessarily go smoother, but I don't know.
You expect it to be. You expect it to be like a little bit closer than dating, but it's not. It is infinitely more close than dating, right?
Well, and you don't realize too, the other point as far as like off of communication as being so vital, kind of jumping off of that I kind of thought of with this was like, you don't realize how much of your communication, how key it is in the beginning. And then as you learn, because like when you're in your dating relationship and you're engaged, so much of your communication is masked because you're still living singularly, and you're communicating like not face to face. You're communicating through text messages and phone calls and stuff like that. Whereas all of your like in my case, I'm a very sarcastic person. All of my, even how I'm carrying myself and my sarcasm and my facial expressions for Kaylee's response, that instantly communicates in a marriage relationship like tenfold.
Yeah.
And that's where like those items are brought to the forefront right away because they were hidden from her previously, versus now she gets to see how like, you know, certain conversations, like how, you know, how I just receive those and how I am portraying myself. And it's really, interesting. That was one thing where like, you don't realize how much, I guess, more damage you can cause and friction you can cause in your marriage just by those like, kind of like interpersonal aspects that are now revealed.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think when you're dating, everything gets masked in just kind of the romance of it all. And then once you get married, it's no longer purely romantic. It's very real. And so whenever you're short or sarcastic, it can actually really cut your wife, you know, and really cut the person that you're with. And you don't realize that. But whenever you become married, you can fall into that kind of trap.
Yeah.
So,
and like certain things like in your personality, like with sarcasm or something like that, where, or something that is maybe biting that you would let slide if it were read to you, but yet it might, like, it's always based on the receiving end. And so those types of things that like, they don't come through in a text message prior to marriage, but yet your wife's going to get the reaction from that right away.
Well, and whenever you're living together, they are more noticeable.
Yeah.
Whenever you're dating, those things kind of just end up getting swept under the rug, or for whatever reason, they're not noticed. But whenever you're married, those kind of things can really dig at your spouse and stuff.
Well, and you can hide them too, like physically. Like you could just not communicate those things if you're not cohabitating. Yeah.
Jeremy died, man. He dropped out of the phone, the chat, it seems, but he'll be back in here, I guess.
What if he's still
hopefully
recording and like he's just talking to himself right now?
He might be. I don't know what happened, but anyway.
Technology. Well, we're down to two brothers talking.
We've had to do this before whenever Andrew's son was a little upset during one of the recordings.
But I mean, just off of that, like that's why it's so, I guess you take the words from like James 1, just clearly of, you know, being quick to listen, slow to speak.
Yep.
And that is something that is vital because, yeah, you can. And a lot of times too, like I challenge myself because I'm not great at slowing down and listening. And that's something that, like, that's one thing that can cause friction in me and Kaylee's relationship very quickly. Just because I'm quick to just process and move on and not just be in the moment and listen and understand her perspective rather than just trying to jump towards the next thing or the solution for that. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you think marriage, like for me, marriage counseling, it was not inclusive of how life actually goes.
Mm-hmm.
And that isn't a fault of, the people that did our marriage counseling at all. I think that was a fault of having very little time to go through it and probably invest enough time into it. But for marriage, like counseling, or for the expectations we have going into marriage, I guess how do you think you manage expectations or priorities in your marriage? Like, do you think, what I mean by that is, how well do you think you communicate that kind of stuff? And how well do you and Kaylee, Andrew, like communicate about it? Because I think for Rachel and I, there's a million priorities that we would think that we would have.
Mm-hmm.
And all these priorities, it can be overwhelming to think that we need to match all of them tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like we need to fulfill all these priorities and expectations starting tomorrow. So how do you guys think that you manage expectations and priorities in regards to not being able to meet them all the time?
Mm-hmm.
How do you think you manage that? Jeremy?
Yeah, Jeremy's back.
Oh, hi.
Yeah.
Jeremy's back. Talk to us, man.
I don't know. I'm probably not very well,
Yeah.
in all honesty.
We don't want honesty on this podcast.
Okay, sorry.
Just lie. No.
No, we do.
Thought I heard a kid. So probably not very well. I don't know. I think I have my own idea of what needs done and what I think is needed at the time it's needed, and I get really frustrated when it's not done, and I try not to make that happen. But I know it
Yeah.
isn't. I know I don't do well.
I think it's a continuous struggle on our end too, because like I'm one where like I'm very type A and like I want to see a problem, find a solution. Like I'm driving towards the next thing, and oftentimes that's just not. I just don't take the time to communicate what should be happening or what we need to prioritize next. Even with like things like, home repairs that I'm thinking need to happen and stuff like that, where like I've already got it in my head that like, here's what's going to go next, but yet I just don't communicate that clearly with her. And then that can cause friction for sure, just because it's not that she would fight against any of these things that we're doing, with our finances or whatever like that. It's just that she is not in the loop a lot of times. And I'm just like, going ahead of her. Yeah.
Oh, I think for us, like going back to the example of, I can be a very idealist person where in my mind I have, we should spend this many days a week doing this many hours a week studying the Bible together, this many hours a week at church functions, this, that, like fill in the blanks, however you need to fill them in. And I've had to learn a lot of patience with the fact that I don't even fulfill all those expectations for myself. And it takes a lot of work to figure out those things as a married couple and as a family. Mm-hmm. And I guess I have to remind myself quite often that my expectations are not the be all end all of what really needs to happen in life.
Yeah.
Like I think it reminds me of Philippians 2, where it's just to no longer only look to the interests of yourself, but to look to the interests of others and to honor one another better than yourselves. So my expectations might be okay, they might be good, but that doesn't mean that I can just declare them as the only expectations, the only goals that matter. And whenever I'm really mad because Rachel, like, you know, I was expecting her to do A and she did B, or she didn't do A, maybe I need to ask myself, why do I care about this so much? Is this really like an expectation? Is this really a big goal? Is this really something that I should get mad about, or is this just something I should have communicated better?
Yep.
But at the end of the day, there are so many things that are expectations that I think you just need to get over when they're not met. You just kind of need to get over them and be like, oh, okay. Like, I'll move on. Like, it'll be okay. And I'll move forward. And we'll get better at life together starting tomorrow morning. You know, it's a practice in everything that you do every single day.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Why am I so mad about this? And also, I don't know. Also, not getting down when you do get frustrated. Say, okay, tomorrow's a new opportunity.
Yep.
To work toward my own expectations and work toward unity. Because I think that's the big thing we all, with the expectations, are trying to get unity together and growing together and learning to grow together.
Yeah. That's really good, because I think I wouldn't always intuitively consider unity as a primary goal. I would often think of my own goals as primary goals, but pursuing that unity ought to be a primary goal for us. It ought to be a thing that we care about and work towards with our spouses and with the people around us.
Yeah. And if that's set ahead of expectations, then a lot of the rest will fall into place.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, all this stuff, just like Jeremy said, like if you don't meet expectations, your spouse doesn't meet them, your family doesn't meet them. That's why there's grace. And tomorrow morning, there's not just grace for forgiveness, but there's also power through God's grace for you to live out more faithfully the next day. And, you know, that's the reality of it.
And even when there's those days where like you're beyond frustrated, or there's like so much friction or whatever, that's where grace does come in even the more, because everything is in light of the grace that's been shown to you. So like, you know, like, yes, your wife might have done, you might have said the wrong thing to you, or might not have done the right, you know, the thing that you would have done that day.
Yeah.
And like, it might just completely put you over the edge in that moment. But yet, like, everything needs to come back to the light of, okay, I need to lay myself down and show grace, even in those moments, because how little is that in comparison to the grace that I've been shown?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
Yep.
But that can be hard, because sometimes your spouse's like decisions can really put a damper on what you had planned to do, or what you would want to do, or whatever. But yeah, you fight back. I mean, Andrew, you said it perfectly. So yeah, absolutely. Do you guys got any more thoughts on this? Did we do all right?
I think we did pretty well. I mean,
I don't know. I missed like 10 minutes in the
Jeremy
middle.
was kind of in and out.
Yeah. Jeremy's internet was a little spotty. That, or
I don't know what happened. My computer's got like the blue screen and said it was done.
Oh,
it's done.
I've actually,
like, I'm taking a break.
I've had that blue screen before. Normally,
it's so random.
Normally, it doesn't happen to me when I'm just like on a Google Hangout. But you know, whatever. We're good.
We're all good. I'm sure you did a bang up job.
Wouldn't be so sure.
I might listen to it and kind of, you know,
to see what you missed.
It might be. I was like, it might be tough to like sync the voices together now. But,
We'll get it figured out.
yeah.
I have a time. I have written down where I came back and went out.
Gotcha.
So.
This guy's smart.
I tried to help my producer.
Oh, the producer appreciates it greatly. But go ahead, Jeremy.
I have so we didn't talk about expectations and the word X. So football's back, so that's exciting.
Is this your recommendation?
Are you about to
I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed last weekend.
Jeremy's about to recommend the XFL. Just
Yeah,
everybody
I'm going
brace
to
themselves.
recommend, just enjoying football. And
Okay.
you can watch football right now on Saturday and Sunday, which is kind of nice.
I'm
It was
not gonna
fun.
lie.
I enjoyed it.
So they did do a decent job, I think, with some of the rules that they changed.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
I think that actually did. Yeah, I was like, it is interesting. Yeah,
we'll see how it is like week 5.
I think the kickoff rule is good.
and like the
I think
whole
the kickoff
extra
rule is the
point
best
thing is
thing.
kind of cool.
I think the punting rule is dumb.
Yeah, I can see that.
But I think the kickoff rule is probably a solution that the NFL should think of, because the NFL now just has really boring kickoffs.
Yeah.
So,
Well, they changed the wedge out, and that the next logical step is, hey,
Yeah.
I think they said there's only one touchback opening weekend,
yeah.
and there's no injuries on it because no one's flying down the
I do
field.
love though that the punt, like the one rule where like if you don't kick it beyond the 20, the offensive team
Yeah.
automatically gets plus yardage on your side of the
Yeah.
field.
They
like,
automatically are basically
It's
in
like it doesn't
scoring
matter.
range.
it's like
Yeah.
just put them in the red
Well-
zone. Just put them in there.
the continuous clock is kind of nice too.
Yeah.
Like in the 25-second, it keeps the game going.
Yeah.
Really, it's pretty fast paced. I enjoyed it, and that's all I'm gonna say. Go Renegades! We're
Who
gonna
are you a
win the
fan of?
championship.
Why the Renegades? You're supposed to like DC Defenders because Cardale Jones is on there.
I chose them because I wanted Bob Stoops to be the Bears coach a long time ago.
Name one player.
opportunity.
Name one player on the Renegades.
Landry Jones.
Oh, is that the
Oh.
quarterback? All right.
He didn't even.
Yeah, he didn't play last
Yeah, he
week.
didn't even play.
Yeah,
My boy.
It was funny.
Who-
They
who
interviewed
was the
him, and it
quarterback
was like,
then?
"Did you hear this interview?" By the way, there's like, I was doing construction for 2 years, and they go, "What'd you learn?" And he goes, "Nothing that translates to football."
Landry Jones said that.
He said that on the interview.
That's funny.
So wait, who was the quarterback then?
Some guy Nelson, who was like an Instagram
Some
model.
other construction
Yeah.
worker they got off the street.
He was like from Eastern Kentucky or Carolina or something like that.
Of course, the Panthers.
But yeah, so it's fun. It's fun for off-season football, and it looks professional enough.
Our podcast talks more about the Arena Football League and the XFL than it has about the NFL,
Go Bears!
which I just find interesting. And I'll say that's not what I expected. But
Because we all really like the NFL.
because we all really like the NFL.
Jeremy
exactly.
just likes it because it is a viable option for the Bears to win a championship.
I mean, it's a chance for one of my teams to win a
I
championship.
saw
I
a
guess.
thing about the last place team in the NFL will play
Yeah.
the first place team in the XFL. And as a Bengals fan who was the last place team in the NFL, I thought, don't do that to me.
That would
because
be
we're
we're awesome. If they had a relegation system for football, I'd be all about that.
no, because my team would now be in the XFL.
It'd be like between them and like the Jaguars.
Yeah.
Well, Jaguars aren't bad anymore.
No, but
No,
like-
it'd be them and the Redskins.
Then you, Dave, but then you go
you
down.
can't say that in our
I
podcast.
said it again on the podcast.
At least
explicit.
starting out, you go down for a year, and you guys would just be able to dominate, probably.
That's true.
Because you
And then
got
just move back
you got a
up.
construction worker as a quarterback on the other team.
yeah.
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 I did notice like 4 of the 5 like the starting quarterbacks and best named players are mostly all from Oklahoma, which I find
Interesting.
hilarious
Interesting.
in the Bob Stoops era.
The Bob Stoops
So.
era. So they're going to get like Jason White. Jason White is going to be the next player in the XFL.
I'm waiting for it. Who was
Matt
the guy?
Leinart.
Who went?
Matt
Brandon,
Leinart.
Brandon Whedon.
Brandon Whedon.
Well-
Matt Leinart is going to go to the XFL.
Well, we were so late in recording this
I'm gonna try
episode
out.
tonight because Jeremy had to work out because he's going to be in there in the coming weeks.
I was thinking about the other day.
Look out.
I might get back into shape and
Look
work
out on the
Columbus
Renegades.
can get a team.
Jeremy's coming.
All right. Everybody has turned off the podcast by now, which is great.
But we haven't.
Yeah. So I'm not even going to edit this part of it. It's just going to Whatever
This
it
is
is, it
B-tape.
is. But next week you can expect the fun. Not next week. I keep on saying next week. We don't do every week. We do every other week. Bi-weekly.
We could do every week.
We could.
We'll
That's
see
true,
if we
but
record.
we don't.
We could record another one. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, we have talked and we did an all right job. And we will see you guys next time. You guys normally say bye. You didn't say bye this time.
Did I say bye now?
I mean, I don't care. Who cares what happens?